300 islands, dredged from the bottom of the Persian Gulf, arranged into the shape of a map of the entire world. Estimated cost, around $14 billion. Continents were carved out of the sea and sold off piece by piece. By Ireland, by Argentina, by Great Britain, private countries for the ultra-rich, reachable only by boat or helicopter. And today, most of that world is dissolving back into the ocean it came from. This is not an internet rumor. In a courtroom, lawyers for the company that held the ferry contract to these islands stated it plainly. The islands were gradually falling back into the sea. The channels between them, the shipping lanes of this artificial planet, were silting shut. Satellite photographs taken years apart show what that looks like from space. Crisp national borders going soft, island edges smearing into the water, continents slowly forgetting their own shapes. Out of roughly 300 islands, only a tiny handful were ever built on. One has a beach club, one cluster has floating villas and a plaza with artificial snow. The rest, the vast majority of an entire purchased planet, sit out there right now as bare mounds of sand, unlit, unguarded, and undefended, being worked on by the tide every single hour of every single day. Dubai sold the world. The buyers paid in the tens of millions per island. The financial crisis froze the map before it could come alive. And the Gulf has spent 17 years since then doing the one thing the sales brochure never mentioned it would do, taking the product back. This is the full story of the world, the most audacious real estate project ever attempted by human beings, the courtroom where its dissolving was said out loud, and the strange half-alive archipelago that remains. 30 seconds of business before we sail out there. If this channel keeps showing up in your feed, it is because viewers like you subscribed. That is genuinely how it works. So if stories about billion-dollar bets against nature are why you are here, press subscribe now and consider yourself part of the crew. Right. Anchors up. Let me take you back to the year Dubai decided one artificial miracle was not enough. The year is 2003. Palm Jumeirah is still under construction, and it is already the most talked about real estate project on Earth. Every developer in Dubai is asking the same question: how do you top a palm tree visible from space? The ruler of Dubai had the answer, and the answer was characteristically insane. You do not build another island, you build all of them. Every country, every continent, the entire planet in miniature, 4 kilometers off the Dubai coast. The state developer, Nakheel, was handed the commission, and the dredging fleets went back to work on a scale that made the palm look like a warm-up act. The numbers deserve a moment of silence. Roughly 326 million cubic meters of sand, vacuumed off the seabed and sprayed island by island into the shapes of nations. More than 30 million tons of rock stacked into a protective oval breakwater over 25 kilometers around, a stone fence built in open water to hold the entire artificial planet inside it. The finished archipelago stretched about 9 kilometers across and 6 kilometers deep, a territory of some 55 square kilometers of new land and private sea, all of it man-made, all of it floating on the same foundation as every project in this saga. Loose marine sand compacted and shaped, with nothing underneath but more sand. The sales pitch was unlike anything real estate had ever seen, because the product was not an apartment or a villa. The product was sovereignty, or at least the feeling of it. Your own island, your own coastline, your own country, on the map of a private world with no roads, no bridges, no neighbors you could hear. Access by yacht or helicopter only. Prices ran from the tens of millions of dollars per island, and the marketing leaned into the fantasy without shame. Richard Branson posed on the island of Great Britain in a Union Jack suit for the cameras. The island of Greenland was reportedly presented as a gift to Formula One champion Michael Schumacher. Rumors attached Hollywood royalty to various continents. By early 2008, Nakheel was reporting that roughly 70% of the islands had already been sold, an entire planet, moving off the shelf at tens of millions of dollars a country. In January 2008, the final island was completed and the reclamation of the world was declared finished. Nakheel had actually done it. 300 islands delivered on schedule, shaped so precisely that airline passengers descending into Dubai could identify the continents from their windows. The timing could not have been more perfect. And by perfect, I mean catastrophic. Because the year stamped on the completion certificate of the world's most speculative real estate project was 2008. You know what happened next? Because the whole planet felt it. Within months of the last island being sprayed into place, the global financial system went into cardiac arrest. And no city on Earth was more exposed than Dubai, a city-state that had leveraged itself to the horizon on exactly the kind of fantasy assets the world represented. Dubai's property market did not dip, it collapsed. Values were cut nearly in half. The cranes that defined the skyline froze mid-swing. And in November 2009, Dubai World, the state conglomerate that owns Nakheel, stunned global markets by requesting a freeze on payments toward $59 billion of debt. Nakheel, the company that had just finished building a private planet, posted billions in losses and had to be rescued with government money. If that sequence sounds familiar, it is because it is the exact same financial earthquake that abandoned the Palm sister projects in our last video. Every island Dubai ever built has the same villain in its story, and that villain is a calendar that says 2008. Now think about what the crash meant for the world specifically. The islands were sold, the money was largely collected, but the buyers, the developers and tycoons, who were supposed to spend the next decade covering their islands with resorts and mansions, had just watched their fortunes evaporate. Construction financing for a normal building on land had vanished. Construction financing for a fantasy island reachable only by barge, where every brick, every worker, every bag of cement has to arrive by sea at multiples of normal cost? That did not just vanish, it became a punchline. So the map simply stopped. 300 islands sat in the Gulf exactly as the dredgers had left them. Bare, flat, empty sand. No buildings, no power, no people. For years, the only completed project on the entire planet was a single beach club on the island of Lebanon, a lonely dot of civilization in an ocean of abandoned countries. The world had achieved something no real project had ever achieved before. It was simultaneously sold out and completely deserted. And behind every silent island was a buyer's story going quietly wrong. These were not casual purchases. Investors had wired 8-figure deposits for mounds of sand, many of them borrowing against booming portfolios that no longer existed by 2009. Development consortiums assembled to build resort islands watched their financing letters turn to ash mid-project. Some owners tried to resell and discovered the cruelest feature of a one-of-a-kind asset. When the fantasy dies, there is no market price for a country, because there are no comparable sales for Argentina. Islands that had been fought over in 2007 could barely attract a bid in 2010. Others simply went dark, held by shell companies, frozen in probate and litigation, their ownership as murky as the silting water around them. The wealthiest buyers on Earth had discovered what ordinary homeowners learn in every crash, just with more zeros. The easiest thing in the world to buy is the hardest thing in the world to escape. And an empty island made of dredged sand is not a stable object. It is a temporary arrangement between the sea and the money. Which brings us to the courtroom, where that arrangement was finally described under oath. Here is a detail of the world's design that became very important the moment everything froze. The islands have no bridges. That was the whole point. Isolation as luxury. Every person, every delivery, every service run to every island moves by water, and Nakheel had granted a single company, Penguin Marine, the exclusive contract to provide that transport. The ferry monopoly of the artificial planet. On paper, it was a license to print money, the sole gatekeeper to 300 islands full of billionaires. In reality, after the crash, Penguin Marine found itself in one of the strangest business positions in corporate history, contractually obligated to pay Nakheel roughly $1.6 million a year for the exclusive right to ferry people to a world where nobody lived. They were paying millions annually to be the only bus line in a ghost town made of water. By 2010, Penguin Marine wanted out, and the dispute landed in front of a tribunal. And it is in those proceedings that the sentence at the heart of this video was spoken. The company's lawyer, one of the most senior barristers in the case, told the court that the islands were gradually falling back into the sea, that erosion was eating the archipelago, that the navigation channels between the islands, the marine roads Penguin Marine was paying millions to operate on, were silting up, filling with drifting sand until the passages between nations were becoming difficult to navigate. The world, in other words, was not just empty. According to the sworn position of the only company that visited it every day, it was physically coming apart. Nikhil's response was immediate and absolute, the same word-for-word playbook you heard in our Palm Jumeirah video. Denial. The islands were intact, the erosion claims were false, the project was sound. And to be fair to Nikhil, a tribunal ultimately found the transport company still had to honor its contract. But here is the thing about that courtroom moment that no denial could undo. The claim did not come from journalists, activists, or rival developers. It came from the operator with the most intimate daily knowledge of those waters, the company whose boats scraped those silting channels every single week. When the only witness who actually lives with the patient says the patient is dying, the hospital's press release carries a certain smell. And then there is the evidence that does not testify, does not settle, and cannot be sued, the satellite record. Compare images of the world across the years of abandonment, and you can watch the process the lawyer described. Island outlines that were drawn crisp in 2008 turning soft. Sand plumes streaming off shorelines like smoke. Small islands visibly changing shape. Edges migrating with the current. The physics behind it is the same physics from every chapter of this series. Unprotected dredged sand has no roots, no vegetation, no seawall, and no defense. The Gulf's currents pick at every island's edges. The Shamal winds arrive twice a year and shove thousands of tons of sand off one shore and into the next channel. Every empty island is simultaneously eroding and burying the sea lane beside it. A maintained island resists this, with dredging fleets, replenishment, and money. An abandoned island simply participates. And for the better part of 2 decades, roughly 95% of the world has been abandoned and participating. Now, if this were a simple story, it would end there. Mad project, crash, dissolution, credits. But the world refuses to be simple because scattered across the dissolving map, a strange partial resurrection has been underway, and it makes the contrast even more haunting. Sail into the Europe region of the map today, and you will find the one corner of this planet that looks like the original brochure. A development group spent years and hundreds of millions building what they call the Heart of Europe, a cluster of islands wired for fantasy at a level that outdoes Dubai. Floating villas called seahorses, with master bedrooms submerged below the waterline, so you sleep face to face with the fish. A Swedish island of palatial beach mansions, a plaza engineered to produce artificial snow in the Arabian summer, a street designed to rain on schedule, in a country where it barely rains at all. And in December 2021, 13 years after the islands were finished, the map finally got its first true hotel, when a luxury resort opened on the island of South America, giving ordinary tourists their first ever reason to visit the archipelago. So the obvious question, if they can do that there, why is the rest still empty sand? And the answer is the quiet punchline of this whole saga. Because the economics of an island are unlike anything on the mainland. Every developed island needs desalination or piped water, its own power, sea defenses, transport, and a construction process where every nail arrives by boat. Estimates for making a single island livable start in the tens of millions of dollars before a single villa opens its doors. The handful of islands that came alive did so because someone was willing to pay island prices forever. The rest stayed dead because their owners, those who survived 2008 at all, ran the same numbers and quietly walked away. Some islands have been resold at brutal discounts. Some are locked in disputes. Some owners simply vanished from the project's history. The map of the world, it turns out, is also a map of who could keep paying and who could not, which means the world is now running the cleanest natural experiment in coastal engineering ever conducted. Identical islands, identical sand, identical sea. The only variable is money. The islands with funding, Lebanon, the Heart of Europe cluster, South America, hold their shapes because crews and dredgers hold them. The islands without funding blur, bleed sand into the channels, and dissolve at the pace the courtroom described. Same planet, 2 fates. Separated by nothing except a maintenance budget. If that sounds familiar, it should. It is the exact lesson of Palm Jumeirah, scaled up 300 times. Reclaimed land is never finished. It is only ever defended. The Palm is defended by one of the richest addresses on Earth. The world, most of it, is defended by no one. Step back and look at what is actually sitting in the Gulf tonight. Because as a symbol, no writer could invent anything better. A map of the entire world, made of sand purchased by the wealthiest people alive, and the ocean is erasing it country by country. The unfunded nations blur first, the rich enclaves glow on, lit and defended, while the channels between everything else silt slowly shut. It is the story of our entire coastal century, rehearsed in miniature 4 kilometers off Dubai. The money decides which shorelines get defended, and the water decides everything else. Dubai's official position remains what it has always been. The islands are intact, development is ongoing, the vision is alive. And in fairness, the city's recent property boom has brought fresh announcements, new buyers, and renewed promises to the world. Maybe the money really does come back. Maybe in 20 years this video looks premature, and the map fills with light from Greenland to Antarctica. The Gulf does not care either way. It has no deadline, no investors, and no memory of press releases. It collected islands from these waters for 100,000 years before Nikhil arrived, and it resumed collections in 2008, the moment the dredgers left. Every year, the channels silt a little more. Every year, the empty borders soften. The sea is the only party in this story that never missed a payment, so I will leave the verdict where it belongs, with you. The world, is it simply a masterpiece waiting out a bad century, land banked in the ocean, ready for the day the money returns? Or is it the most honest monument Dubai ever built, proof, written in dissolving sand, of exactly where human ambition ends and the ocean's patience begins? And answer me this before you go. If someone offered you your own island on that map tomorrow, your name on a country, $30 million, tide included, would you sign? The comments are open, and I read everyone.